everybody, welcome back to the Golden Bolt, and welcome to the second episode of Shrektober, where we're going to play Shrek Extra Large on the Nintendo GameCube. I'm going to break this game into pieces. I just want to fucking... This game takes place at some point after the ending of the first Shrek film, but presumably before Shrek 2. Shrek finds out that Fiona has been captured by a wizard named Merlin, who is holed up in his Dark Tower fortress of pure evil. The magic mirror offers to help Shrek and gives him a book that will highlight all the good deeds he has to complete in each area. Only when Shrek completes all 4 deeds can the magic mirror teleport him to the next area. Before Shrek can get to Merlin though, he has to clean up the mess made by the evil Ice Queen through the first act of the game. When we get to her, we find out that she double-crossed Merlin for no particular reason, and then we're told about some dragon or something.
You'll need armor. From a warrior that's been dead for quite a while, in the crypt areas beyond the mountains.
You know what? The game doesn't even try to make a coherent story, so I'm not even going to bother wasting too much time picking it apart. Each level is so thinly connected to the next narratively that they're pretty much sustained plots. Not that this makes them any better than the overall plot, of course. Shrek has to complete a ton of random objectives that have seemingly nothing to do with anything just because. To name a few, he has to chase down a cow and then fart in its face to calm it down, punt prisoners out a window into freedom because they asked you to, murder several clowns for the prince's amusement, and slowly guide Hansel and Gretel across a makeshift bridge because they're afraid of this house troll thing?
I want the cookies.
You eventually, after a ton of random filler quests, find the dragon's castle and... The dragon gives you all the exposition.
I do not understand why the Ice Queen conjured it here in the first place. I never liked her. But of course, she was better than Merlin. They've been close friends since childhood, you know.
3 days later.
The Ice Queen thought that Merlin I want him gone, and so I present to you the crystal breathe dragon's fire for a short time. It gives an additional meaning to the concept of dragon's breath, don't you think?
What? And then gives you Merlin's crystal ball and a special apple that lets you breathe fire, for some reason. Then you finally get to fight Merlin and his army of exploding things and furniture? You save Fiona, the end. Unless, of course, Merlin glitches out of existence, making you restart that entire level. In that case, Fiona's dead and she never comes back. Take your pick. Now, what there is of Shrek Extra Large's story is told mostly through these narrated storybook sequences that explain each mission. And of course, there are occasionally some of those really, really bad in-game cutscenes sprinkled in too.
You're here to steal candy from me too! Well, those blasted merry men took it all. It's been like this every
12 seconds later.
The writing for the storybook bits is actually pretty alright. I think I even got a chuckle out of a couple lines. The writing anywhere else is atrocious. For some reason, Shrek is a mute, and Donkey's not mentioned once in this game, so that automatically hurts it even more. Some of the absolute best moments in the Shrek movies simply involve the banter between Shrek and Donkey, and to remove the former's voice and exclude the latter entirely just kills any soul the game could have had narratively. What makes matters worse is that Donkey is on the front cover of this game, and he doesn't even appear on the damn title screen. How do you get away with that? This might be the worst plot I've reviewed thus far. You want to know why Hassel at the Castle got a silver bolt for its story? Because I knew this game was coming, and I had to make it clear just how bad, even as a licensed Shrek game of all things, that this game's plot actually is. The story's getting no bolt from me. I guess you could call Extra Large a platformer. I mean, it's not. There really isn't any platforming going on because the mechanics are so awful, and there certainly aren't any actual platforms, but whatever. The closest point of comparison would be to a game like Mario 64 or Jak and Daxter. There are several different objectives in each level for you to complete before moving on to the next one. As I mentioned before, the reasons are rarely good, but more importantly, the actual missions you're tasked with are consistently filler at best and actively awful at worst. For example, in the very first level, the first objective is to return Little Red Riding Hood's candy to her, which the game calls Mission 1 for that level. In order to complete Mission 1, Shrek must guide Hansel and Gretel over the makeshift tree bridge
Cookies!
to get the super onion so that he can explosively fart a hole in a wall and grab Red Riding Hood's candy basket, and then get all the candy back in the basket one by one before giving it to her. So in order to complete the first mission according to the game, you must first complete missions 2, 3, and 4. That's the kind of backwards, mindless ass game design we're dealing with here. Now, I mentioned an onion a moment ago, so let me go back and explain the game's mechanics a little bit. Shrek can jump by pressing the A button, punch and kick by pressing either the Y or B buttons respectively, grab stuff by pressing X, and he can burp or fart on enemies by pressing the R button. A light tap is a fart, a full press is a burp. Every time Shrek does either of these, he uses some of the game's gas meter. He can then fill the meter back up by eating onions. It gets better, don't worry. By eating chili peppers, Shrek can burp fire, or if he crouches just before farting, he can perform a bomb jump straight out of Metroid, except with his ass. This game doesn't feel like it's supposed to be a Shrek game. It feels intentionally gross and in your face about how stupid it's trying to be. Even the way Shrek sprints, it almost feels like it should have been a Wario game or something. Also, on a completely unrelated note, Shrek has the worst wall jump I've ever seen. He just flips all of his momentum entirely to the direction opposite of what you're pressing. If I jump at a wall head on, but my stick is even slightly tilted in another direction, Shrek goes flying according to that direction, not the wall. There are also a couple extra abilities that Shrek gets as the game goes on, such as a ground pound, but none of them matter. To complement these awful mechanics, this game has no level design. It's just different assets plopped together with the developers hoping things just work. Whole chunks of levels mean nothing to the overall game, except that now there's more space for you to run around in aimlessly looking for your next objective. There's a huge disconnect between the objectives you're tasked with performing and how the game attempts to explain them even. When I'm told I need to carry some bugs to get these spider babies to follow me, perhaps it's not a good idea to let the bugs bite Shrek, causing him to drop them and causing the spider babies to run away. When I'm told to give the bells a ring to wake up the guards, my first thought is to punch the bells or throw the guards at them, not to wall jump on the tower, which somehow makes the bell ring. Moreover, to hang on wall jumps for just one more second. When I'm presented with a level, I shouldn't be expected to kick off a wall and awkwardly turn in midair just to get up to the mandatory second floor of said level. That makes no sense, especially when the success rate of that wall jump is less than 10% because the wall jump is so wildly friggin' inconsistent. Add a platform in to show me that that's an area I should be trying to wall jump to or something. Better yet, don't rely on shoddy, broken mechanics, just give me some damn stairs! Oh wait, even when they give you stairs, they don't work sometimes. The mechanics in this game are so bad that the game actually made me question whether I missed something else in some of the levels. I've never had to replicate the same exact jump attempt 40 times, give up, and then come back later only to find out that I was supposed to make that exact jump, but the game decided, no, you're not going to make it this time. If the jumps don't work perfectly, give the player an alternative. If the character control is awful, don't add in insanely precise platforming. This is common sense. Basic gameplay shouldn't be a gamble for the player. I'd say I feel sorry for the developers behind this game, but I don't. You wanna know why? This game was made by DICE. You know, that DICE. Battlefield DICE. Even worse, this was the enhanced port of this game. This is after they presumably fixed things. Say what you may about that team now, the fact that DICE, of all teams, not only developed a game with zero regard to decent game design, and didn't even use any of the basic tenets of game design, period, but then they improved it, ported it, and still left it an utter mess. It's just inexcusable to me, and that's even more true considering they released the first Battlefield game not 1 month before this. They knew how to make good games at this point. And I haven't even touched on how this game has one of the 2 worst cameras I've ever experienced in a game. I actively got splitting headaches from how much the damn camera jittered every time Shrek took a step. The gameplay is getting no bolt. The game barely works, and in the off chance it does work, it's one of the most disgusting, least enjoyable slogs I've ever experienced. Okay, 2 more minutes, Kevin. You can do this. I want you to picture in your mind mud. The concept of mud. This game is, to me, the personification of mud. Everything has this sickly, brownish, dead look to it in this game, and the fact that the game is beyond dark makes it all even worse. There is no brightness setting in this game. This is as good as it gets. Oh, and by the way, this is what the game actually looks like. I've been editing the brightness after the fact so that you weren't looking at a black screen for the past 7 minutes. Half the time I couldn't tell what was going on or where I was supposed to go, even with my TV brightness all the way up. That's magnified by the game's frame rate, which I'm pretty sure doesn't actually exist. I've played games that run at sub 30 frames per second natively. This game feels like it jitters between 10 and 20, and the jittering is the worst part. I could probably handle a game that runs at 10 frames per second. I wouldn't like it, it would be terrible, but I could handle it. But this game, it's never consistent about when it wants to shift around on me, so I can never get used to it. Then there's the audio. This game is made up entirely of stock sounds and bad voice acting. Generic punches, generic burps, generic farts. Hell, the game even has the same stock rooster call from the N64 Zelda games. The voice acting, well...
Seems like you weren't a bad apple after all.
So, anyway, if you really want to get...
But now, because I am rotten to the core, I shall have to destroy you! Ooh, you're playing hardball, are you?
I know the script that these voice actors were working with is awful, but there's no semblance of effort here. As a result, some lines are unintentionally funny, but the only voice worth noting is the storybook narrator. She does a good job delivering her lines, towing the line between reading things as if she were actually narrating a story, and still keeping it funny for the few lines she does get to play around with. But that's one tiny, minuscule gem in a big pile full of crap. To stay on the audio for a moment, the music sometimes just doesn't play, but when it's there, it's somehow pretty unfitting for most levels. I can't remember a single tune outside of the first 5 seconds of the title theme because it's all just filler noise. Oh, and while we're on the title screen, what kind of title screen is this? It's a still image from the movie with horrible wobbly ass text overlaid, and the little noise you get for pressing buttons is a burp? That's... DICE made this game! No, I can't do this. This game is unbearably dark, unbearably ugly, and the frame rate is unbearably choppy. There is almost no music, and what little music there may be is unremarkable, if not outright terrible. Meanwhile, the voice acting is horrendous. Let's just make it a 3 for and note for the history books that this is one of the worst games I have ever played. No bolt. Hey everybody, thanks for watching, and yes, I'm fine. The game didn't drive me to insanity, yet, don't worry. If you want to see more of this awful, awful game, go ahead and click that tiny little video on the right side of the big video you're watching right now. That will take you to a commentary I did with my buddies over at Cross Factor Commentaries of Shrek Extra Large. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe.